and welcome to this new little sort of series that we're starting out with, called What's Next 4. And essentially, we're going to be talking about the revival.
Yeah, we are.
Yes,
It's
we
me
are.
and Kieran,
Yes, yeah,
and we're
they've
talking about the
left.
revival. Where are they going? They've been released by
They've
the
left the
LW.
prison. They've Ambrose, not
Yeah,
Ambrose. Moxley told us it was a prison,
they've left.
metaphorically.
They've left the Ambrose Asylum,
Yes,
and now they're going to come and join John Moxley in the Moxley Mayhem land. There we
yes,
go.
yes. And basically, what we'll be talking about today is what's next for the revival. I mean, we all kind of knew this was coming.
Basically,
On
we've
a
known
bright,
it's coming.
yeah, yeah. So
So we've known it's coming. We all assume they're going to AEW, but they could go anywhere. They could become um, porn stars. We don't know. We don't know.
I mean, we don't
But
know
that's what this discussion is here for.
exactly. We are gonna give ideas, and we're gonna suggest that they go on, yeah, and do all like porn and whatnot, all that stuff. Yeah, wherever. Cool.
But I'm assuming I'm assuming you're assuming they're going to AEW because that's the main.
I mean, I think
It's the,
with other talents that we've had leave from that company, it was very open ended. There wasn't a lot of interest. Well, at least on the surface, there didn't look to be too much
yeah
interest in them going about to AEW to particularly go for the Young Bucks or anything. But in this case, there is particular interest. The one thing that we know that the revival were after, despite being given heaps of money, is creative, and that is something that AEW does
yeah
provide. As we've heard from multiple
yeah
podcasts, from multiple sources now. So at the end of the day, they get the dream match that they're after, they get the creativity that they're after, and at the end
yeah
of the day, it's like, it's the second biggest company. So I mean, happy days in that regards. Um,
yeah
so I think we're all expecting them to go to AEW, but that's by no means a bad thing.
yeah
And as we'll come on to with my idea later on, I think this opens the door for something rather exciting within the realms of AEW. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, what we're going to start off with is Gareth. He's got, as you said,
Uh,
you've got loads of ideas. That's what you told me
all
anyway.
part of a larger idea. Yeah, it's all part of a larger idea as to where I think they can go, or I hope they go, and just basically some ideas as to what storylines and stuff, what gimmick we could see them portraying, or what matches they could be having, what feuds and all that. But
Yeah.
it's all part of it's all in the same world basically.
Yeah? Okay.
So it's not like they could do this in New Japan, they could do this in AEW. So it is that they'll be going to AEW, and I think I'll just jump straight into it
Jump straight into it. Go on.
with my first one, which is their debut. Yeah. And I've got them debuting the show after Blood and Guts. So in my head, they've obviously delayed Blood and Guts. We don't know for how long, but let's just, because there's so many things up in the air, I'm just assuming it's when they want to save it for when the crowd's back, basically. So there will be a crowd there. And it'll be the show after Blood and Guts. And at Blood and Guts, the Elite lost, and Hangman was the one who. Don't worry, don't get angry that Hangman's getting squashed. It all works out for him in this story.
Takes the
So
piss.
the Elite, being Omega and Young Bucks, then turn on Hangman on that next week. They basically blame him, say that it's all his fault because whenever he does any, he's always the one causing problems between Omega and the Young Bucks and within the Elite as a whole. Cody, who has acted as the peacemaker in the build-up to this, he isn't there as he was injured during the Blood and Guts match, so that's why he because I basically want to get him out of the way. But so basically, that's where Omega and the Young Bucks turn heel on Hangman, because if you turn Hangman heel, I'll cry. I'm not having that. He's my favorite, and I'm not having it.
He's a
He's
lad.
he's the greatest babyface to have ever lived. So yeah, he's a top lad. He loves drinking beer, and he's a cowboy. You can't turn him heel. It's just not allowed.
It's just not allowed.
Meanwhile, Omega and the Young Bucks kind of thrive in that role, or at least that's what we've seen from the past. And also, I think it's a slightly more interesting thing, delving deeper for Kenny Omega into that whole losing yourself or having left yourself in Japan and kind of losing yourself. So his kind of moral compass, it makes more sense for his moral compass to turn. And then the Young Bucks are just really good heels, so have them be dickheads. So the revival, going against everything, pretty much everything they've ever done in at least what we've seen them do in WWE and stuff. They run down to a huge pop, save Hangman and their baby faces. Positive, because we've always seen them as heels and just be like, oh, fists, yeah, heels. So it's a slightly different thing for them, which I think could be a fresh thing. But basically, because they're going to get a huge pop anyway, you might as well just have them be faces, at least to start. You can always turn them heel down the road. Don't complain. Um, Anyway, so they chase off the Elite, and then they basically announce their allegiance to Hangman. They say they relate to him because they felt like a small cog in a bigger establishment, similar to how the Elite have treated Hangman. So they kind of, and they say, similar to um, how we were, treated. We see that in you, and that's why we like you. And also, if you're not convinced by that, all of them are country boys, so you can just do the cowboy shit stuff. So yeah, that's basically how I'd have them debut. That's my idea for that.
Cool.
Um, am I doing my whole thing all in one, and then you'll do yours?
Yeah,
Is
do
that,
your
that
whole thing.
is
Do your whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll move on now to the kind of first matches that I've got for them.
Yeah.
And so a couple of weeks later, because I feel like this is something that I want enough build towards. Basically, a couple of weeks later, we then get the main event of Dynamite, which is the revival with Hangman, um, as that's or the revival and Hangman rather than with, because then people will think that he's at ringside. This is in one match. It's a 6-man tag, and they take on the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. And this is basically, obviously, it'd be a great match. I'm doing a screw finish, and I know AEW doesn't do them very often, but when the story and the stakes are right, they will. And basically, everyone just gets too heated that they start going mental. Some of them are outside the ring, some of them are inside, going through tables and everything. The ref's just like, I have no control over this match, and ends it. No silly like a DQ or anything. It's just both teams lose basically control. Um, and then for the upcoming pay per view, we then get Kenny Omega versus Hangman and the Young Bucks versus the Revival. Just felt like separating these into their own things, because then we get Kenny and Hangman have their beef just between each other, and that's where that root causes. Because Hangman, we already know he hates the Young Bucks anyway by this point, so they don't need a match. They just don't like each other. But Hangman still has something against Kenny, and Kenny obviously still has an issue with Hangman. And then the Bucks versus the Revival, just because it'd be a fun match. Obviously, not too much story there, but there's enough to sell a pay per view match, and there'd definitely be enough hype. Throughout all of this, though, Cody has been split with his moral compass as the company's top babyface. He kind of keeps presenting in that way. He hasn't turned heel like the rest of the Elite, but then he's obviously got that friendship with the Elite then, and that's what's causing him this issue. So kind of leading into the pay per view, I haven't really got a match for Cody, but like his kind of thing is the kind of question they're posing is, how is Cody feeling? Because he's kind of criticizing without being too brutal on his friends, but criticizing their behavior and saying he doesn't really agree with it, and he still thinks that the Elite can get back together with Hangman and all that, blah 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 blah. Even though that's obviously long gone. Um, but basically, that's kind of Cody's thing for this pay per view. So we start with the Young Bucks versus the Revival, and the Revival get a clean win because this will be their first major proper match, and you don't want them to lose, basically. And also, it sets up the Young Bucks, who go back frustrated. They're very focused on not having the Elite being in embarrassed on the stage, especially with all the drama going on. They want to show that they're the best. So we see the Young Bucks deliberating with Kenny Omega as to how they can save the Elite from that embarrassment. And then, so later in the Hangman versus Kenny match, the Bucks come out at some point. You know, Hangman's kind of looking dominant, and the Young Bucks come out and they kind of, they start getting involved at ringside. Not too much because they don't want to ruin the match, but enough in a similar way to like maybe the Inner Circle does, um, where it's not match ruining. It's just kind of here and there, enough to sell the story that they're basically helping Kenny and they're being heels, blah 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 blah. But eventually, Kenny does get the win, and I know two big losses for Hangman, but it all ends out okay, right? So just who cares? Um, so yeah, Kenny gets the win, but this ends up being the final straw for Cody after Hangman's frustrated. He starts trying to take them all on. They all beat him down. This is the final straw for Cody. He denounces the Elite. They'll have a scrap, or I don't know what happens. Basically, Cody leaves. Point, which is the gimmick of what the Revival will do.
Mm.
As of so far, they've kind of just been the Revival. We like fists,
Yeah.
um, and just being lads with Hangman. Maybe they get involved in the drinking and stuff. You know, they could pull that off. But it's basically that. But the kind of longer term vision is a Four Horsemen esque style stable with Cody and Hangman and the Revival, because Arn Anderson said in his modern Four Horsemen he'd have Cody and the Revival. He said Braun Strowman as well, but you know Braun Strowman's not in AEW, and also that would be boring.
Mm.
And Hangman, he is a cowboy, so he is literally a horseman.
Mm.
So it basically has to be him. There's no arguing. I'm not taking any argument. It has to be him. I'm right, you're wrong. But basically, this is so Cody kind of leads it as the leader, but Hangman likes it because he's allowed the freedom to be himself, and also he's allowed that success, which he usually saw in the Elite, other people getting, and him not getting those opportunities because of that. Cody,
Mm.
obviously, because he's not going for the top title, he takes that step back from that side of things. So Hangman's kind of their representative, I guess, in the main event scene. But Cody is very much a leader, but just because I think he's got the charisma and the mic skills for that. And the Revival, obviously, the tag team part of the stable, and it is just a stable. But I do have. I'm going to do their first kind of bigger matches, then moving forward, and then I've got another big angle. So just wait. But that's basically the thing.
Mm.
I also with the Horsemen, I wouldn't want it to be compared too much to the Legends. Obviously, Cody has Arn Anderson in his corner when it's not dangerous for him to be there with the old virus. But when it's back, I assume they'll go back to that. So there will obviously be those comparisons. But like to replace each member of the Horsemen back then, because I don't really think that's exactly possible. Um, but basically, and I don't want them, just to do all the same kind of stuff. You can still be original with it, with just having something which is kind of similar to the old times. And I think that's what Cody likes to do as well. He likes to take ideas from the old, kind of put his own twist on it, and then also kind of, modernize it a bit as well. So
Mm.
I can see him doing that. But anyway, their first kind of bigger matches, then moving forward from there. Um, well, I guess months. I was going to say weeks, but over the next few months, leading up to the next pay per view, they earn themselves a tag team championship shot, which they then win. I don't know who the champions will be at this point. Whether it could even be the Young Bucks, but basically, the idea then is to have a title feud with the Young Bucks, which is kind of the dream feud that everyone's wanted for however many years this whole online kind of rivalry's been going on.
Yeah.
This is kind of reality for that, and I think I just wanted to see it done for the titles. So we get it kind of teased before, but then as a story, and that kind of builds the story later for their title matches. So we get the stables having somewhat of an involvement, but this is basically the titles. This is the feud we've all wanted for ages. So that's kind of. I assume you kind of have that somewhere in yours as well, because it's the obvious one.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that? You do, yeah. Yeah, like it would be silly not to because that is literally the one everyone's been looking forward to, I guess, for so many years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know how. I've literally written here, book it however you want. I don't care. I literally just want the feud. I don't really care about the booking. Um, it will drag on for a while. Not hopefully not too long. But if we were to get maybe like three big matches, a couple on TV, and then one blowing off on the pay per view, over this entire thing, I think that would be a cool little thing to do, like a trilogy. But then my next big thing, I've titled it "New Enemies." So this is later. This is about a year into the almost a year into the revival being in AEW, and Arn Anderson's going around being like, "Whoa, I've got the new Four Horsemen." Blah blah blah. Tully Blanchard, he's not happy. He was in the Four Horsemen as well, and he's not happy. He's talking smack, and he's being like, "Arn Anderson, he's a little bitch, right?"
Yeah.
And I'm he's basically sending cryptic messages about like potentially having his own stable, blah 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 blah. Obviously, we've got Sean Spears at the moment looking for a tag team partner, so
Mm.
maybe that could come into it. Also, I'm just gonna say now in this world, let's say Cody beat Archer in the final of the TNT tournament,
Mhm.
um, and they've had kind of an on-off feud throughout the year. So basically, Tully Blanchard he hits up his old mate, fucking Jake Roberts. He's like, "I've got a boy, you've got a boy," and also. He starts sending these cryptic messages about the Huntsman or some shit name like that because wrestling's stupid. But I just thought or something like the Huntsman versus the Horseman. That's such a WWE thing to do. It's so shit that I just want it to happen.
I'll make Blackheart
Or
versus Rebel
any
Heart.
kind of stupid name like that, basically. Oh, that's exactly it. Um, I don't know if AEW really want to be doing that, but at the same time, I wouldn't even put them past them. So wrestling's so stupid that it probably just will happen. But basically, so the idea for that is Sean Spears gets with Lance Archer, and I couldn't think of a tag team, so they'll probably have to sign one because I was looking at the AEW roster and I was thinking there isn't really a tag team that suits this, so they'll
Mm.
have to sign someone. The best I could think of was the Butcher and the Blade in AEW, but I don't want that because that's
Y-
crap. Um, Even though they look a bit like, or at least the big is it the Butcher? Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
looks a bit like Jake Roberts in that being like an old an old man. Um, but yeah, I don't know. You have to find a tag team. I don't know who that is, but basically, that's the story. It would be them kind of, and it would very much be very similar to that Sean Spears Cody match where it's probably overbooked. I've got this a year on for Blood and Guts, so you could even do it in like a Blood and Guts match again, um, because it would have been enough time. And if that is something they might do every year when the story pops up to serve it, this would be a story that would serve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got the thing of like obviously Sean Spears and Cody as well. They've got a kind of ongoing rivalry, which is probably one of those things that in the realms of reality will never go away until they kind of squash that. Lance Archer, as I said, is going to have an ongoing thing with Cody throughout the year. With like the title, and I've got kind of this kind of idea that maybe he never gets to beat Cody, and maybe the ending of this match is that he actually does. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's something like he's the one that Cody's the one that he can't beat. He beats literally everyone else, but he can't beat him, and he become quite obsessed.
Yeah,
That could
yeah,
be a
yeah.
thing,
No, it could be.
basically.
It definitely
I
could
haven't
be.
really thought too much about. I haven't really thought too much about the exact how you tell this story because it was kind of um, at the end when I was writing down my notes and stuff, and I was running at the time, and that's why I couldn't think of like a tag team. I was trying to think of one like the indies who realistically might sign because I'm trying to keep it realistic and stuff. But yeah, I couldn't really think of one, so they'll have to find someone or two people
Briscoes.
to do that. They did pop into my head, but I think they've signed quite a long term deal with what's their faces ROH
ROH. Yeah.
and yeah, so I don't know if that would
That's fair.
be realistic. You never know what could happen in the future.
Never
But yeah,
know.
that's like my first year for the revival in the company, basically company of AEW.
Okay. That
So
wicked.
yeah,
Is that you? Is that you? Is that you? Gun done?
Yeah.
All your
I don't know who
pieces.
wins that final. Yeah, I just want to say I don't quite know who wins that final match. There are probably a few ways you could go.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it is. There is.
but but yeah, like I kind of feel like if you're gonna then be starting a new stable, particularly like Spears and Archer and stuff, especially if they've kind of been on the back foot for a long time, probably makes sense for them to win. Yeah, sometime in the near future, I'd like to see Hangman become that champion as well as, but we'll all in good time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
that's me done now.
That's you. Okay, cool. No, that's really interesting, though, man. You've really dived deep into the actual booking scenarios of it. Sorry for my yawn there. It's been a long day, but
Disgraceful to be yawning.
I've went into a similar direction. However, I've sort of focusing on an idea centered towards AW, but the revival with them entering, it makes a lot of sense. They have all the pieces to go out and do this thing that I have here. So
Yeah.
it's very similar. Our beginnings. I've
Oh,
got that. I've got that. Paige gets kayfabe injured, and I've just gone creative view about him taking a loss. He gets kayfabe injured,
yeah.
and it's his own fault, maybe drunkenness or something or other like that, because of course on character
He
and
gets
whatnot.
he gets drunk, climbs up the cage, and then jumps off it.
Well, like this is AW, like God knows, but I just thought I didn't want him to lose. I don't know, like
Yeah.
I wanted to. You can absolutely do it, and you can get sympathy from that. But I thought if there was a way to get sympathy from him without having him lose, it would, that would probably be a decent way to go as well. I think either way you could win, but I've gone with that to increase sympathy for Paige, as you can sort of build that sort of
Yeah.
sympathy because he never lost it. It's like,
Yeah.
but then of course Omega pissed off of all of this, of his actions, and you can build up to all of this. Of course, turns along with the Bucks, of course, because they have an agenda. They've somewhat have a bit of an agenda against Pages of late, and so
Yeah.
essentially there's a Omega Bucks heel turn, as you've said as well.
Yeah.
But the tag team is essentially broken up. Therefore, the titles are relinquished,
Ooh.
and the Omega and Bucks, they beat a Page, and then the Revival make the save for Page, initializing a stable with them, as you have done. I haven't went with the 4 horsewomen. I've just gone with the 3.
Horsemen, mate. They're fucking
Uh,
men.
um,
They're top lads.
um, the Revival align with Paige as in character. They sympathise with Paige's struggle in trying to exit a situation that's toxic to their own mental health and what stuff like that. Like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And you came up with one that's fairly similar of that realm as well. Basically,
Yeah.
there is definitely a tie there to establish
Yeah.
a stable between the three
Yeah.
people. So that's like
And they're
amazing.
all from the countryside.
Yeah, and they're all from this specific part in this specific country.
They're all from the countryside. Look, boys, we've got a similar upbringing. We've got to be friends, right?
Look,
That's
boys,
wrestling.
we like grass, we like hats, we like horses. Let's let's start this, mate. Let's start it. But either way, this is where it derails from the feud and more into a different idea. A tag team league is announced by AEW.
Bloody hell.
And I don't know if any of you viewers at home are familiar with the G1, but essentially what you have is 20 competitors. 10 are in Block A and 10 are in Block B. And what you essentially have is everyone faces one another in Block A. All the competitors in Block A, they face one another, and all the competitors in Block B, they face one another. If you win, you get a certain amount of points. If you lose, you get no points. If you draw, I think you get like 1 point or something or other like that. But either way, what you get is this league system, and the two top people with the most points at either block, they are then inserted into a final. That is what we have in the G1. But my idea is inserting that in with tag teams, having 5 tag teams in Block A, 5 tag teams in Block B, and essentially running that throughout Dynamite, and then you'd have the top two face one another in a final. And so what I've come
Yeah.
up with here is having the tag team league is new to most Western viewers. It's new, it's competitive, it gives all the talent something to do, and in that we get to see the Revival face four other tag teams on their way to the final against the Young Bucks, which
Yeah.
inevitably will be the final. Let's be honest with ourselves here.
Yeah.
But given as well, this is just another side idea. But given as well that a lot of stables they have three people, so maybe having like a substitute system in place might be kind of nice to freshen things up as well. So in the case of, you could just have Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, Best Friends, Jurassic Express, and Private Party all in one block. But really, what you could do is you could have Young Bucks with Omega, and you could substitute there. With Lucha Brothers, you've got a Death Triangle, so you can insert Pac, you can substitute there. You can have Best Friends,
Yeah.
they've got Cassidy, Jurassic Express, they've got Marco Stunt, so maybe you want them to lose. I know they use Stunt as a punching bag to lose and whatnot. And then, of
Mm.
course, with the Revival, with this new stable, you can have Paige, and I've inserted Sean Spears and his new tag team partner. You know, like, that
Yeah.
gives that a little bit of something as well. Inserted that. It just, add in a little something. With Proud and Powerful, you can have the Inner Circle in general, so you can have Guevara. They probably wouldn't have
Yeah.
Hager in there because they will have to lose.
Yeah.
Or maybe Hager doesn't think, On the Dark Order, you got Brody Lee, Uno, and Grayson. And then with SC, you got down. So essentially, the
Yeah.
list I've got here is Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, Best Friends, Jurassic Party, Private Party, SCU, The Revival, Sean Spears, and two tag team partners of his choice, wherever, of uh that Horseman, that his manager, of their choice, essentially. Proud and
Yeah.
Powerful, but Inner Circle essentially there, and Dark Order. That's 10 teams,
Yeah.
5 in each block. And I just think, say, come out of Double or Nothing, heading into perhaps All Out, you could run this in that span of time. You could make use of Dark. You could,
Yeah.
because there's going to be quite a few matches. Because what New Japan does is that they've got it piled into a month, and even then, like, the shows themselves are quite large. And they're all about making tag team wrestling a big deal and everything. And to be fair, since their establishment, it absolutely has become the case. But I think they can make it
Yeah.
more of a highlight if they have it featured
Mm.
here. And sometimes, if you don't want a tag team to main event, a tag team match here to main event in the competition, you can chuck it on Dark, and that gives more
Yeah.
incentive to watch Dark as well. So I just think it's really, I guess that's just ultimately where I came to. We started this off with the Revival, but I think with the Revival inserted, I think you've just got a really diverse and strong roster that you can start something like this with, which hasn't been done before, and I'm fairly
Yeah.
sure a lot of people would be fairly interested in. I mean, what I've got here as well is ultimately Revival need the win to start. Like, they need the win in the final, probably. So probably,
Yeah.
well, I wouldn't say they probably need the win, but I think for the grand story, um, you could have them win. Page ultimately proves his point because it's against the Bucks. They lose and everything, and I think as well, coming off the Bucks, this will be 2 occasions where they've just failed to. Well, 3 or 4. I don't know how many occasions they've failed to get those titles, and I think on a
Yeah.
long-term story basis, you could really tell the story of them really trying to get there when they're baby faces from this point as well. I don't know. Whatever. I just think
Yeah.
that could be a real moment, and you could make that a real big deal, like months time or something or other like that. But
Yeah.
I know I've diverted a bit off the Revival, but when coming up with ideas for this, I just thought, you know what? Why haven't they done this? I understand for now, but
Yeah.
I would really love to see something like this because it just adds extra incentive for all talent to be involved. It's got an extra. You don't need a whole lot more storyline involved. It's very basic. It's a
Yeah.
competition-based thing. You could still, but of course, there will be those things. It will be touched upon, at the end of the day. And so, yeah,
Mm.
I don't know what you think of it, but I just
Useless, mate.
useless, absolutely useless. But I said all it is. It's just putting a bigger spotlight on tag team wrestling, which they have sold me on. I do like tag team wrestling more so now than I ever have recently in the past,
Yeah,
and I think something like this, considering now, I think what there's 10 teams involved here. Majority of them have three. If you implemented that substitute system, if you wanted to, I decided that as an option because you've a lot because we seem to have a lot of three men
yeah,
stables, or at least three men you can feasibly place with one another. Because
yeah.
and so that I just think that kind of makes sense as well, just to add that to it. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think on that? I don't know.
I like the idea. Yeah, when you started saying like G1 and like 10 people on each block, I was like, oh, that wouldn't work. But then with it being five, like you could do that over a couple of months, and because you've only got the four pay-per-views in a year, like that can very much build then towards a pay-per-view, um, where you have the final, and the either something like that for the championships. Then
Yeah,
it's very sports based, which AEW likes. It's very like competitive based, and we've seen that they're willing to do tournaments with the TNT tournament, with the tag team tournament in the past. But this is kind of like the next step up to being, like you said, more of a league. So before, when we had Private Party beat the Young Bucks, that was a first round thing, and it was really cool because it was like, oh, that's a really good way to get them over. And in this, with something like this, you can easily have like, say you got a team like Private Party or Best Friends or something who doesn't always get the wins. If you need to have a bigger team like Proud and Powerful or whatever, not get to the final, then you can have to build like the stakes. You can have Proud and Powerful say beat the Young Bucks, say they're in the same thing or whatever, but then on in their last match they then lose to Private Party, and that's what then costs them, puts Private Party over, and it still gets you a result, that kind of thing. So it's a good way of getting meaningful victories, um, like some of the smaller tag teams, as well as like people like the Young Bucks or the Revival or Pram Powerful, whoever who we kind of see as more top teams anyway, you know?
yeah, 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 yeah. But
So yeah, I like it.
oh, I like yours as well. Obviously, with very different things, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's very different, good that we just got completely different ideas surrounding the whole revival coming out of this. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's both of us done. Let us know your ideas. I'd love to hear what other people have got in mind for these
Yeah,
now,
what do you want to see?
because at the end of the
What do you
day,
want to see from the Revival?
I mean, it doesn't have to
Sorry.
be AW. We've assumed AEW here. I think
Yeah.
rightly. I will defend rightly because
Yeah.
it seems to make a whole lot of sense. But hey, I mean, if you wanted to see them go and face Girls of Destiny over New Japan, I mean, a lot of us would still be up for that as well.
Yeah.
There's multiple avenues that they could go around, but no, I think that's us done here, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I said, let us know what you want to see the Revival doing, because it'd be interesting to see what everyone and what you think of our ideas, but also suggest your own down in the
Yeah,
old comments section. And I'm assuming everyone, if not pretty much everyone, wants to see the Young Bucks match. But what other matches in whatever company would you want to see as well? Because yeah, I'm trying to think. There's so many different teams that you could have them go against.
I think I think
Wrestling, that is.
I think the real highlights are like the more athletic ones because, of course, the revival are such a they're not they have traditional elements to their game, so taking
Yeah,
on more athletic guys, so like the Young Bucks, the Lucha Brothers, Private Party, I think them in particular are
yeah,
a really exciting mix going ahead. So, but then of course you do have the Inner Circle, Proud and Powerful. That is, you do still have Jurassic Express. You do still have Best Friends, and they're all capable of being great matches in themselves. But yeah,
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation anyway. But that is where we'll leave it. Until unless we carry it on in the comments or on Twitter, as I'm sure will happen. But yeah, thanks for joining
Amazing.
us, and we'll see you soon, I guess.
We'll see you soon. Thank you ever so much for joining us. And of course, if you want to follow us, please subscribe, all that good stuff. It's just on the frame
Yeah.
below. Do your thing. Enjoy the
Hit
rest
the
of your day.
bell.
Take care. Hit the bell, all that stuff. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. See you soon.